welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Madeline.
I'm Julian.
And I'm Emilio. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yup, music is what brings us together, but movies, that's what keeps us together talking at the end of the night. So we've decided to create some order to this ongoing trend and record these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 distinct categorizable guidelines for engagement.
This podcast is an evolving thing. Changes and tweaks here and there will most likely happen. But while we do it, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of movies related to unique Best Picture winners with a category we call Mise-Unseen, where the three of us watch a film that none of us have seen before and discuss our impressions and main takeaways from a first viewing. And that movie this week is CODA, Best Picture winner from 2021, correct?
Yeah, released in 2021. The ceremony was in 22, but I always think of it as being in the year that it was released.
Sure, yeah, of
totally.
Course.
Yeah.
We are going to have a written transcript of this episode available for our deaf and hard of hearing listeners.
Yes, so that the content of this episode can reach the specific target audience of the film. A good place to begin this discussion is with why we all hadn't seen the movie.
There's a double meaning to the title of this film because CODA, C-O-D-A, is an acronym that stands for Child of Deaf Adults. And it also happens to be a musical term to describe a section of a song or movement that brings it towards its finale or is the finale. So it serves these two different meanings. Mm-hmm. There's the music angle. And I guess from that angle, I'm thinking like there are several reasons why we probably could have gotten around to it. Mm-hmm. I think there's one big one that we talked a little bit about before, which is that this is a little bit of a hard film to track down if you are not an Apple Plus subscriber. It's Apple Plus, right?
Apple TV Plus. Because Apple TV, just that is like a physical device, like a Roku.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Apple TV Plus, which you don't need an Apple TV to access. Yeah. And even I'm someone that has had Apple TV for a while because the last time I upgraded my phone, I got a year for free. And even I had not seen this movie until the last week.
Sure.
Yeah. I am a heavily subscribed person when it comes to streaming, but Apple TV Plus, I think, came around at a time when I thought, well, I'm already subscribed to enough things. I don't think I should add to that list just for my own financial security.
As a person that has this service, it's very limited in terms of content because they only have their own original content on this service, which is different than almost every other streaming service.
And I would go so far as to say that CODA is something of a crown jewel, right?
It's their first and I assume only film to win an Academy Award.
Right. It did win the big one, so to speak.
And a couple of still big but less big
That's
ones.
That's true.
Yeah. Also won Best Supporting Actor for Troy Kotsur, as well as Best Adapted Screenplay. Because
this is based on a French film from several years earlier, I think 2016? 2014. Yeah. La Familia Bélier. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly.
Bélier.
It's been a long time since I took French.
And I'm not a French speaker either, so I'm no further help with that. Yeah, so adapted in the sense that it is a remake. So that's another interesting thing about it being a Best Picture winner is that I don't think you get remakes that often in that category nominated, potentially, or more than potentially. But, the winner, I can't think of any other examples.
Particularly remakes of recent movies. You think All Quiet on the Western Front, right? That technically is a remake, but it's a remake of a film that's decades old.
Yeah. Almost 100 years.
Almost a century old.
In fact, interesting trivia on that, All Quiet on the Western Front was the 3rd Best Picture winner ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another one that would fall in that category is Ben-Hur, because I know Ben-Hur was a film that was, I think, released in 1925 first as a silent film, and then obviously became the juggernaut that it was in 1959, won a zillion Oscars, including Best Picture.
Worth mentioning too, I just thought of this as we're talking of like relatively recent Best Picture winners that are remakes. The Departed, remake of
Infernal Affairs.
Yeah. The Hong Kong action thriller film from just a few years before The Departed. I had the thought, coming off of our previous conversation and into this one, I had the thought, oh, God forbid someone remakes The Silence of the Lambs someday. I was just like, don't even touch that movie.
Mm-hmm. Are you about to tell me that somebody is?
No.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Yeah. No, it's like I'm almost a little self-conscious of having said it now because I don't want to, will that into being. But
well, there have been so many other adaptations of Hannibal as a character, like multiple sequels, but also Hannibal the television show.
Yes.
So I feel like it's possible that Silence of the Lambs could one day get remade. Knock on wood. There are lots of guitars here. Someone knock on one. But they've also like really, juiced that character in general.
Well, maybe nearly 100 years later, like with All Quiet on the Western Front, maybe then.
Mark your calendars, everyone, for 2091.
Yeah.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Maybe then.
Maybe then.
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs, very different film than CODA.
Possibly
very
the
different.
most different.
Yeah, there's we're doing a real heel turn here in terms of tone and general overall feel. But one thing I did want to mention a little bit about is that portraying, I guess, deaf characters on film is not necessarily something that's totally new to the Academy. I could be speaking out of school here, but I think maybe one of the more prominent examples of a film that was centered around deaf characters with deaf actors would be 1986's Children of a Lesser God, which also happens to star one of the actresses who is in CODA, which is Marlee Matlin. She is something of a pillar in
absolutely.
the deaf community.
I think of her as being like the most prolific deaf actor alive and probably ever. I mean, now we have Troy Kotsur, who is now the second, deaf actor to win an Academy Award, obviously in a different category. But it's just the two of them, right?
Yeah, I think it's just them. And they're holding it down, both represented in CODA. And on a slightly lighter subject, I also have to thank Marlee Matlin for teaching my son how to say table in sign language, because she signs for the Baby Einstein video series, which is, if you happen to have a toddler in your life, it's pretty cool. But Marlee Matlin is there, teaching you how to say certain things. So table, thank you, Marlee Matlin. My son still knows that one. So obviously lesser work than Children of a Lesser God. That movie, obviously, I think really catapulted her in a big way. And I, in preparation for this conversation, decided I was going to check that movie out, because that one, I had a really nice time with it, and I think it does a lot of things very well. In watching it, I felt like there were some really interesting comparison points between the two films, particularly in how they chose to sort of depict sign language and deaf characters so that hearing audiences would be able to understand what's happening with these deaf characters and characters who can hear on screen. In CODA, they essentially use subtitles in order to relay what's happening with the sign language. And that's not something that they use in Children of a Lesser God.
That's interesting.
They actually, I got to admit, they do a rather clever job of getting around that. The William Hurt character has a very specific character trait, which is that he says that somebody in his life once told him that, he can't communicate with anybody when he's trying to amuse himself, which is all the time. And it's really true, because that character, he says things out loud to himself a lot in order to kind of make sense of things. And he's also a little bit of a smart aleck. So what happens a lot in the film is she will be signing to him, and he will sort of speak it back or respond to himself in some ways. It's like a really busy role. Like he's doing a lot in terms of conveying things to the audience.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, because I mean, in CODA, as you said, it's mostly subtitled. Every once in a while, for like a line or two, subtitles will drop and like you'll only see the signing. And I actually think that because ASL is such an expressive language, that you actually generally can get the sense in these short bursts of what someone is trying to convey, more or less.
Yeah, or there's a particular intention behind not having it
That too.
written out to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said, not to get too deep into CODA yet, but there's like a bar fight scene that I think when the character we follow, Leo, confronts the guy he ends up punching, I don't think we have subtitles for what he's saying to the guy, but we have a general idea that
Absolutely.
it's screw you, you poured beer all over me.
Yeah, exactly. Something to that effect.
And actually, I think at the very beginning moments of the movie, before the subtitles actually began, I had to wonder, like, wait, are the subtitles on? Because I think there were a few exchanges in American Sign Language that happened without any subtitling that were, maybe it was, just kind of the equivalent in conversation to like, hey, what's up, or something like that.
Yeah, I think on the first scene on the boat, there's some like gesturing that I don't know was fully signing, although there may have been some of that as well. But I think because like they're so connected and you can see like their eye contact, that I feel like you can still get the sense that they are conveying something to each other, even if it may not be something that requires a subtitle.
Right. Or that it could be something that's maybe not necessarily ASL, but is some communication that they've developed between themselves. Father and son, co-workers at the same time too, in a semi-high pressure situation out on the seas. Right. Yeah. But I also found that to be really interesting as well. And I don't necessarily think that the movie is worse off for it. It's just a very different experience. What I will say is that Marlee Matlin is still extremely expressive in this film. And you still, I think, get a really fully realized character out of her, which is one of the quiet triumphs of the film. That's just me speaking. I could totally see somebody looking back on it and saying, well, there are some things that they could have done differently. But especially for its time, I think it feels like a pretty big step forward in how a deaf character can be portrayed, and also the amount of attention that a story gives a deaf character. Because the story is really about her.
Story.
It's her story. It's her transition and her like arc in the film. Yeah, it's interesting, and both movies honestly like quietly have like really similar themes. They're both about young women who like find solace and comfort in staying close to a community or certain people. And then through the introduction of like a new influence, kind of realize that they have to seek out more for themselves than just the life they've lived so far.
Yeah. And the other thing about Marlee Matlin in Children of a Lesser God, like we spoke about how she's the only actress, the only deaf actress to win Best Actress to this day. But she's also still holds the title of youngest actress to win Best Actress for that film.
Yeah. That's pretty cool to knock off those two right there.
She was 21 years old when Children of a Lesser God came out in 1986. Number 2 is held by Jennifer Lawrence for Silver Linings Playbook.
And
that's right.
Wasn't it Anna Paquin won supporting actress?
That's right.
Yeah, when she was
right.
like 10.
Yeah, something along those lines. Very young.
And then Tatum O'Neal, also very young, but supporting.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Anna Paquin, interestingly, won that award in a movie directed by Jane Campion. It was The Piano in 1993, but Jane Campion, who was up against CODA at the Oscars in 2022 when the ceremony happened.
Yeah, because that was Power of the Dog year.
That was Power of the Dog year. And actually, I think, we'll get into this a little bit more further in the conversation, but I think it's worth saying at the start that when CODA won that award for Best Picture, I was pretty surprised.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the three of us obviously keep up with film a lot. I don't think I was familiar with this movie until the ceremony.
I was aware of it.
Or I guess until the nominations came out.
I definitely wasn't either.
I was aware of it, but only in the sense that I had looked on Rotten Tomatoes the week that it came out and noticed, there's this certified fresh movie called CODA being released to Apple TV Plus. And I'm kind of like, okay, guess I won't see it right away because of where it's streaming, but I'm going to note that on my list. I'll come back to it at some point.
Which you did.
And here we are today.
Here we are. We're doing it now.
But yeah, I mean, I think that Power of the Dog was my guess for the winner that year.
Yeah.
And it did also like win, I think, multiple awards. I mean, at the very least, Jane Campion won Best Director.
She did. And yeah, actually, as a companion to this episode cycle, I recently received and have been reading through a copy of the book Oscar Wars by Michael Schulman, which is a fresh new book. It was just released in early 2023. And the afterword of it, which I'll actually talk a bit more about in a moment, is it covers the ceremony in which CODA won in 2022. That's the very end of the book. And now, sadly, in that night, CODA's win was overshadowed by something a little bit more sensational, which I probably don't even have to say. In fact, Gerard Carmichael went on SNL and did a whole stand-up routine about how we're all going to talk about it, right? Without ever saying what it is.
But for those of us who perhaps just have no sense of time anymore, this was the year of the slap, TM.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. I was literally here going like,
You're like,
wait,
what is it?
Did Chadwick Boseman not winning over...
That was the year before.
That was the year before. Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about what other crazy Oscar scandal. Okay. There we go. Wow. It's been that long, huh?
Yeah. I mean, close to 2 years as of this recording, more like 2 years on the dot when it's released.
There has been one Oscar ceremony since
There has
then.
been one. Yeah. And a lot of people saw those Oscars where The Power of the Dog went up against CODA as like the streaming Oscars, where, I mean, it's not like it's the only Oscar ceremony where streaming companies have competed, but Power of the Dog was a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
And that was long seen as the heir apparent to the Best Picture throne. But then in the weeks leading up to the ceremony itself, some turns started to happen where there were, I'm going to refer directly to Oscar Wars now, where they call it the campaign trail gaffe, in that The Power of the Dog, had a couple of last minute scandals that ruined, or maybe not ruined, but
Tarnished?
I mean, that feels like a strong word. Soured, sunk its reputation amongst awards voters. One of those was infamously that Sam Elliott made some very bizarre comments about it on Mark Maron's WTF podcast. Just like weirdly homophobic remarks about the movie. And it was a whole big thing. And like, actually, it's something that Mark Maron still talks about to this day. It was a very odd publicity moment for that show. But then also that Jane Campion herself had made an awkward comment about Venus and Serena Williams at another awards ceremony, I think for the Critics' Choice Award.
Yeah. Whose film
King
Richard was also being considered, I guess.
It was
up for awards that same year.
It was, yeah. And so then that combined with CODA winning a Producers Guild Award, gave it kind of this comeback energy late in the game. I was surprised to see that. It was a movie I personally had not seen by the time that it won the award. And I think that similarly, there were a couple other, maybe if not only The Power of the Dog, there were some other heavy hitters that year that I thought might have been a little better postured for the award that didn't get it.
So let's talk about that. Why do we think this movie won?
I really am trying to balance a few thoughts here, because in the sense of the kind of story that it tells, disregarding any details of representation, it feels pretty conventional in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward story. I think we'll get into opinions later. I think that's a minor fault of the movie, is that it feels kind of predictable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But can ultimately make for a pretty easy feel good watch also.
Yeah. I think predictable has not necessarily stopped other films from winning Best Picture or doing really well at the Oscars. Mm-hmm. But I would agree that this movie, there's something about this film that right from the outset, it starts to really telegraph all of its plot points. And my general sense about this movie is I love where its heart is. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really beautiful film with a really wonderful message. Yeah. And I think there are some really spectacular acting performances and really specific moments, I think, that really, really resonated with me when I was watching it. But overall, I'm just going to say it. This movie kind of felt like a Hallmark movie.
Absolutely. So,
which I hate to say is a pejorative to Hallmark films, but it just really, really formulaic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It feels like, I mean, one thing, we were talking a little bit about representation of deafness in media, in film. And where my mind immediately goes is a television series that was produced by ABC Family called Switched at Birth. This was on in, I think, the early 2010s. And from the title, you wouldn't necessarily know that it centers around deafness. But essentially, the basic plot of this is that two babies are switched at the hospital and are raised by not their biological families. And one of those girls is deaf. And so even though you're exploring in this television show the dynamic when they find out as teenagers that they've been switched and like reuniting with their birth families and connecting with them while also balancing their relationship with the families that have raised them, there's also this added element of one of these teenage girls is deaf, and she goes to a deaf high school whose administrator, I think, played by Madeline. She's like a supporting recurring star on this show. This movie felt like a subplot on Switched at Birth. Like it feels like this could be a character that you follow on an ABC Family TV series.
Yeah, which is slightly unfortunate because I do think that the representation in this film is a really, really lovely thing.
Yeah.
I think ultimately the strongest parts of this film lie with the family.
Absolutely.
The connection between them, the performances of all four of them, the actors that play the parents, that play Ruby, our main character, that play Leo, her brother, their performances are spot on, really beautiful. We talked about Troy Kotsur winning the supporting actor Oscar for this.
Too.
He's wonderful. And I think my personal favorite scene, and I think a scene that resonated with a lot of people, is a scene between him and Ruby, his daughter, our main character.
On the back of a pickup truck?
Exactly, on the back of a pickup truck, where she has, she throughout the film has been pursuing her love of music. And that's, up to this point, not been something that he can engage with her about. And so at this point, he asks her to sing for him. And she does, and she gets she tells him what the song's about, and she gets more and more powerful, singing louder, and he starts to touch her and feel the vibrations in her chest and in her throat, and they're just like locking eyes and crying, and I'm gonna tear up thinking about it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's those parts of the movie that I wanted to be the whole movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Pretty much any time we entered the high school, they lost me.
That's the last scene that you described that was easily my favorite scene of the movie. There were a few around it too that were some worthy runners-up as well.
Yeah. You mentioned that Ruby's character had been pursuing her love of music. The movie kind of situates it sort of like it's a brand new thing for her, which is also one of the things.
Odd. Yeah. One of the things that I don't care for.
I agree as well.
It's an odd quality.
I think that it's a little too convenient. That little detail makes it a little too neat. And I have not seen this other movie, or one of the things that kicks off this whole movie is that she and her friend Gertie are looking for electives, or they're signing up for electives. And she decides, based on her attraction to a boy,
I am so glad you brought this up. Continue.
that she's going to also join choir with him.
Yeah.
And the boy that she is following, or she's into, is this guy named Miles, who is played by Ferdia Walsh-Pilo, who is also the main character of a film called Sing Street.
Mr. Sing Street.
Exactly. And we were talking about extremely specific letterboxed lists. We could definitely make one that would be titled Ferdia Walsh-Pilo Pines/is pined after and inspires dedication to a musical endeavor.
Absolutely. But yes, I'm glad you brought this up, because that's one of, I think, the most frustrating things for me about how they set this up, in that she goes on later to say, like, singing is my favorite thing. I sing all the time. I love to sing. But when she's in line, when she and Gertie are in line picking the electives, it's her glance over at Miles that makes her supposedly make this snap decision of like, I'm going to sign up for choir. And that's really irritating to me. And one of
exceptionally for me too.
Yeah, like that's one of my frustrations with this movie is how the high schoolers are written. Not necessarily Ruby in general, but anything happening in the school, anything to do with Miles or Gertie, I was frustrated by because it felt like adults writing teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, Madeline, because I know that you have a background in music education. I know specifically with choir too.
Yes, for those who do not know, I taught middle school choir for 4 years prior to moving to New York. So I have a background with this.
Totally. I'm really curious. Is this just what filmmakers think an audience is going to accept and or want a choir teacher to look like or sound like? Or in your estimation, like, is this closer to reality than not? I've been in choir as well. I had a very different presence for a choir teacher or a choir director. I'm curious because my initial reactions were like, are you serious?
I don't particularly care for Mr. V.
You don't want to call him Bernardo?
I cannot do that every single time I have to say his name during this recording. So no, just the once. I don't particularly care for Mr. V. And I have a section in my notes that says just Mr. V and explanations of why I don't agree with some of his choices as a teacher, which we don't need to get into some.
I'm slightly curious to get into some though.
Morals in some ways,
right?
In his song choices, for example.
I know what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
That first one that he teaches them all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For those who haven't seen it, they're singing "Let's Get It On."
Yeah,
and he's specifically fishing. In that moment.
Yeah,
he wants to see who the randiest kids are.
Yeah, and he even tells them when they're like not quite expressive enough, like, you're high schoolers, all you ever think about is getting it on, which is extremely inappropriate to say to teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, it may be true, but also just not something that you put out there. But not. It also typifies, I think, a little bit of he's sort of allowed to kind of skirt the line between what is inappropriate and appropriate. Yeah. Sometimes I get a little bothered when it's the choir director, it's the art teacher. It's
absolutely.
That they're allowed to kind of have that latitude as opposed to other teachers.
And I'll tell you, IRL, he would have gotten an email from a parent the next day after introducing this song. No way would he have gotten more than one day into rehearsing this song.
Relatedly, from along a different point in the movie's plot, but that scene later on where Miles, after he and Ruby have had a falling out and he just texts her in the middle of the night, like in real life, he is responded to kindly by Ruby in the movie. In real life, he would have been ghosted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that she has a lot going on in her life. God,
so much.
She has so much. She's waking up at 3 a.m. either fishing with her dad and her brother or trying to start their fish selling co-op on top of school and on top of music practice. And so she's often running late. And a lot of times, I'd say probably every time, it is not her fault. And he just immediately, I understand why a person like a teacher for a student who is continually late, I understand why that would be frustrating. He knows her situation. So the fact that he immediately goes to you have no discipline, you're wasting my time, I think is also really inappropriate and is not what she needs at this moment. She needs compassion.
Yeah. And he's situated as the compassionate teacher, which I get. Again, for the machinations of the story, there has to be some push-pull between them. It can't always be easy breezy. Oh, don't worry, I'm the one that gets you. I see what's going on. You're okay in my eyes. In real life, she would have had a conversation with him to be like, bro, I'm doing this. I don't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. I think it would make sense in the film for him to be frustrated and hey, you need to talk to me because I'm not sensing your dedication here. And we need to know why that's not happening because I'm not going to waste my time.
Right.
He can be frustrated while also approaching her as a person rather than just cutting her off in her time of need.
Right. It's I get it. You're overextended. That's people, that happens all the time. Let's try to figure this out.
Another thing about him too, I mean, that house that he lives in, I mean, I was sort of thinking that like his wife must be the breadwinner of the family because like for a high school choir teacher, it's an awfully nice house.
Very nice house.
Yeah.
Not to say that a high school choir teacher doesn't deserve that, because, you know, they very well could.
But it's definitely a public school based on Ruby's family's financial situation.
He's got a thick record collection too.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, you know, he ostensibly has been in music his whole life.
Yeah.
Let's see. He graduated in 89, class of 89. Maybe he, I don't know, spent some years in a touring band or something, was able to sock away some money.
Yeah.
Maybe he invested in real estate early, was able to flip a home or two.
Yeah.
You never know, but there's also something that happens in some of these films. It's that Friends effect where you go like, this is not a real apartment. These people who are scrounging for money and are complaining about their lack of wealth and lack of opportunity. And then they live in this just enormous palatial penthouse.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but hear David Byrne in my head as you said that. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Yeah.
But yeah, even
how did I get here?
Even our family's house, she can repeatedly refers to as gross. And I mean, it's a little unorganized, it's a little chaotic, and that's understandable. But I think when you see the inside, it seems quite nice.
Yeah.
Whenever we see them in the living room, it seems very spacious. She keeps calling this house gross, and I think it looks cool. But Miles
I
also
think so
kind
too.
of says that.
Yeah, it looked like a pretty cozy house to me.
Yeah.
Totally.
But if we can go back to Mr. V, I have a list of things that I just want to like go
Rattle
through
off.
of things that I did not like.
Do it.
One, he says most people who are terrified of singing don't sign up for choir, which I'm going to say is wrong. I'd say that as a former choir teacher, this idea that every kid that signs up for choir is like a diva that wants to take center stage is absolutely incorrect. And I'd say the majority of my students were students like Ruby who just loved to sing or were curious about singing. It like this idea that no one who signs up for choir could ever have stage fright or be afraid to sing in front of their peers is absolutely incorrect. And again, inappropriate to say to a student.
You were talking about how the writers of the film seem to be writing extremely unrealistic dialogue for the teenagers. I gotta say too, I felt like they had a really unrealistic handle on music.
Yeah.
And this was one of them, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought like kind of if you're going to name like a music college for Ruby to potentially go to, Berkeley's like the first one you could look up on a Google search.
To be fair, though, this movie does take place in
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is sort of that element where it's just kind of like, okay, music, college, Berkeley.
Oh, there we go. We did it, guys.
I had, I think, 5 or 6 auditions. Like, it's odd that she only auditions in one place.
Yeah, and she gets in.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
She gets in.
And this is with all due respect to Berkeley, too, because, I mean, we are music teachers. We have colleagues who went to Berkeley.
Totally.
You know, it's like the school is not representative of the identity of everyone who goes there. You know, it cuts in many directions. But I sort of was thinking about that, like that when the first scene when Mr. V suggests maybe you should apply to Berkeley. Like I kind of thought the same way I did about, or felt the same way I did about when Ryan Gosling describes jazz in La La Land, which is just kind of like anyone could have written this.
Totally.
And that was especially disappointing coming from Damien Chazelle, who had just made a great jazz movie with Whiplash, even if it's, you know, not totally realistic, but, you know, certainly compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt similarly there. It's just like, this is kind of like...
It's low-hanging fruit.
It's low-hanging fruit. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that he has heard her sing like once at this point, I can't remember exactly if he has this conversation with her the first day she sings or not long thereafter.
Yeah,
He's heard her
soon
sing
after.
solo only a handful of times and is suddenly like, you should audition for one of the top music schools in the country.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, and it also goes right back to what you were saying before, which is that a lot of people who do sign up for choir are not doing so because they want to go to Berkeley. They're doing so because they just love music and they want to be a part of a team that pulls something off.
In my student teaching, we had a class that was just like kids that just got dumped into the class because they didn't, get another elective. Like a lot of schools have that where they just like cycle through different electives or they're just assigned randomly or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, if you go back to middle and high school, there are plenty of instances where it's just like kids have to take this class.
Yeah. I'm curious, what else is on your list? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Next up is Happy Birthday is a bad choice for this voice classification exercise. It's not, I don't know exactly what song I would choose instead. I often would just do it with basic like vocalises, like very basic warm-ups. I think Happy Birthday is a bad choice because of the octave jump.
I think so too.
Actually really difficult for a lot of people.
It also doesn't start on the tonic. It's really weird.
Exactly.
So it's very confusing for especially people who don't really know what they're doing because they oftentimes start in the wrong place.
Exactly. So because it doesn't start on the tonic and because of the octave jump, it's difficult for someone to find a key for Happy Birthday, particularly if it's as a voice classification exercise. Then you like for kids that potentially have no singing experience, they don't know what key to start in. And when they do the montage, they're all in different keys.
Cook, Madeline, do it.
So that was number 2.
I love it.
Which also, though, reminded me and my one of my college choirs, we spent a full week where everybody in your section had to sing 2 people at a time next to each other and then switch sides so that you were on the other side of that person. And you did this in combination with every person in your section so that we could figure out like the best standing arrangement.
Standing arrangement,
and because of blend.
Yeah.
Because, your hearing being better in one ear or the other, just the timbre of your voices working together, like, people who should stand next to each other because their voices blend well or people whose voices clash a bit more. This took a full week.
Yeah.
Seemed like kind of a waste of time, but I guess it was effective.
I will say too that I don't think these are the kinds of details that you have to include just for the musicians or the music nerds that happen to see the film. I think these are the kinds of details that you could totally throw in that if handled properly and researched well enough can totally become part of this very same narrative.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's one of those things where, again, it just feels a little lazy.
Yeah.
But also, just speaking of musician representation in film and films that concern deafness, Sound of Metal, that was a movie released just a year before CODA, also to streaming, largely due to the pandemic, if not entirely due to it. But that was a movie that, which traces the journey of a drummer in this, I think, like a hardcore band who begins the film as a hearing person and gradually loses his hearing.
Yeah.
As
And
it
then
goes
tries to become a hearing person again.
Exactly. Yeah. Via cochlear implants. But that was a movie where, like, as a musician, I felt like that movie got the musician character a lot better.
I totally agree with you. And I think that movie handles this in a way that doesn't actually lose a viewer that's not a musician too. I think, CODA and Sound of Metal, they're kind of like apples and oranges. They're movies with very different drives and in some ways very different messages, even though they are about self-actualization. But but your point's a good one.
Yeah, and it's also that Sound of Metal was a movie that I don't think it won any Oscars, but it was well regarded by the Academy. It was nominated for Best Picture. And then Paul Rossi, who's a supporting actor in the movie, was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, he was great.
He was great. Yeah,
really good. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, he could have won that award, and I would have been happy with it. Although he lost to Daniel Kaluuya, very worthy winner that year.
Was Riz Ahmed also nominated?
I think he was. So. I don't know if I should go to the Wikipedia now and figure it out, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'm already doing it. I'm on Wikipedia.
While you do that, is there anything else on your list? I'm fascinated. This is one of the big things I wanted to know.
Did you guys notice they never show Mr. V's hands while he's playing the piano?
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Well, that's an area where like I guess the movie got me because I wasn't looking for that, but I think my mind was on different things.
It's interesting because this is a movie that shows hands so much. Like it's a movie that focuses on the signing a lot.
That's a great point.
That's true.
But they kind of intentionally have to hide his hands whenever he has to play piano. They also don't really show Miles's hands when he plays guitar that much, even though that guy does play guitar.
He does play guitar, and you know what? On the subject of that, I don't know what we want to call this because we don't necessarily have a ton of films that meet this particular requirement. But I'm wondering if we call this like the accuracy of guitar playing index. Maybe this is something that we can return to if there's guitar playing that happens in a film.
Like with Ryan Gosling and Barbie.
Ryan Gosling and Barbie.
Yeah.
I also think slightly there's a character in Safe that just pops out and starts playing a song.
Yeah.
Which I didn't mention in that conversation, but accurately plays a song in E flat.
Awesome. Yeah, I had noticed that too.
And what I'll say is that at least in this film, Miles's guitar playing is spot on for a guitar that is tuned in drop D.
Interesting. Yeah, it seemed accurate. It just seemed like they weren't really, it wasn't a focus of the scenes whenever he's playing.
Definitely not. But also, I think to your point, like, because it's not a focus, I think it also lends a little bit of credibility to his casting. That detail does not have to be like, hey, look, he plays guitar.
It's true.
It can be just a small detail that's there for anybody who happens to be looking for it and knows what to look for.
Returning to Sound of Metal for a moment, I have the Wikipedia up now. It was nominated for Best Picture, Original Screenplay, Best Actor for Riz Ahmed, and Best Supporting Actor for Paul Raci, and won for Best Sound and Best Film Editing.
There are some really clever moves in that film. I think particularly in the final third of the film, when the cochlear implant becomes a very salient, to use a term that I know you like to use, feature of the film. Cool, man. That's good to know.
The Sound of Metal, too, it's like, I think to its credit, it's a movie that is not entirely about music, and it is not entirely about hearing either. There's really quite a lot underneath the hood of that movie.
I think you could say the same about this movie. I mean, when we first started talking about it, the things that we felt did work were what it says about family, what it says about, the bond that you create when you and your bloodline, you're like a team, you're all pulling in the same direction. The moments in the film that were trying to service that particular theme were happening. That was when I felt most connected with what I was watching.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And along similar lines, so we've already mentioned this film once in the conversation, but have either or both of you seen Sing Street?
I haven't, no.
So I've seen about half of it, but the John Carney filmography, I think, is a really interesting thing to talk about when we talk about this film.
Yeah, because I was thinking about Sing Street quite a bit while watching CODA, not just because of Ferdia Walsh Pilo. What really I was thinking about with this is the general arc of the movie, the tone of it. There were a lot of similarities I saw between Sing Street and CODA. And one thing with Sing Street that stood out to me, and this didn't bother me watching it, but it still stood out to me, was that it seemed kind of like when the main characters of that movie decide to form a band, it seems kind of like the learning curve of music is pretty immediate. Like they just suddenly know how to do everything.
That is another nit I definitely have to pick about this film. About CODA, not necessarily Sing Street, although I agree with you about that too. I do remember that.
It seems more with Sing Street that there's more of a time lapse that it happens there. I would believe that a little more with that movie than with CODA. Yeah, it's just they kind of suddenly know how to play everything, and then they're making music, which admittedly, watching Sing Street was pretty compelling to watch, that aspect of it.
Amongst other details related to Mr. V, one detail that totally just disappears by the end of this film is that he says you have to have a prepared piece and you also have to be able to
sight read.
Exactly.
And even he doesn't say prepared piece. He says you need a classical piece.
That's
and
right.
And then we don't see her learn one.
Yep.
And that's another thing that was really frustrating. That's another thing on my list is the fact that he says you need to learn how to sight read and you need a classical piece. And I remember I feel like I had 2 audition pieces when I auditioned for music school. Does that sound right to you?
I think that in my case, I had one, but it was not the only thing in the audition.
Yeah. So I'm curious if like she had Both Sides Now and then also a classical piece that we just never saw her rehearse or perform, or if they say classical piece and then are like, we don't need to worry about that.
The audience
fine.
isn't going to relate to a classical piece the way they'll relate to Both Sides Now, which admittedly is an absolutely baller song.
It is. And I honestly, the audition scene for all of the issues in the screenwriting that lead up to it, I was pretty sold on the audition scene.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You know, one of the other really strong moments of this film is what they do when that duet happens.
Yeah.
Right? The duet
Agreed.
between Miles and Ruby, which is at her family, none of them which can actually hear her perform. But they are there anyway in order to show their love and support. One of the final performances of that concert is a duet. What you see happen in the film is actually really clever. There's like a rack focus from the stage to the parents who were in the audience. And it's synced really beautifully with a slow volume drop completely to silence. And it's there to put you entirely in their perspective where they have to read the audience in order to know how to respond and then how to know what kind of voice and talent their daughter actually has. And I thought that was actually one of the most powerful scenes of the film.
Absolutely.
And it pays off beautifully for the scene on the pickup truck, which is that you see that moment there in the performance is not really about her performing the song beautifully. It is about the connection that her parents make, truly understanding that their daughter has something special.
Yeah.
How well she performs it is not nearly as important as what that song and that performance is doing for their relationship.
100%. I genuinely said, whoa, aloud when this happened. And I think this was a moment where the movie pulled me back in because I had some frustrations with the first half of the movie. And when that happened, I was totally dialed in. And then, it goes from that scene to the scene in the pickup truck. And I think, I agree that these are a really good, like 1-2 punch emotionally that really just brought me back into a movie that was losing me.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I would add that I think you say 1-2 punch. I say that
there's
is
a
third punch.
At
And I
the
think
audition,
that is one very strong aspect is how performance in front of her family is handled.
Yeah.
And that third performance when she's actually auditioning,
They
when she's
sneak
able
into
to
her
sign.
audition.
And and in that moment, she's actually able to sign the words to her family and that there's a better understanding for her family when it comes to her love for music and whether she's got what it takes.
At the beginning of the concert, I said she should sign this. Before the sound drops out, when she starts the duet, I was like, what a great moment it would be if she signed this. Wouldn't that be a real nice way to tie this all together?
Her hands aren't busy.
Yeah, I was a little frustrated that at that point, I was a little frustrated that they didn't add that. And then they drop the sound, and then you get the scene in the pickup truck, and then she signs at her audition. And I'm like, okay, this works. Because I was like, she needs, at some point in this movie, she needs to sign while singing.
Yep.
Oh, and some nice wordplay there too.
Yes.
I was going to say really quick, I know we said you're just talking about CODA, but there was one movie that I couldn't help think of when I was watching CODA, which is Lady Bird. The idea of a coming-of-age film is not reinventing the wheel. But I do think that Lady Bird was a film that recently set a new high watermark for this kind of coming-of-age film, particularly about a young girl or a young woman who was going off to college. And there are so many of the same beats here in terms of whether her parents truly understand her wanting to get out of, wherever she's at.
They're from
right
more
now.
working class families.
From
They
working
both
class
want to
family.
pursue some sort of art.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's a detail of Sing Street too, the working class aspect of it, and of the main characters wanting to get out of Dublin and go to England to make their music careers happen.
Yeah.
Very salient details, to use my favorite word.
No, it's cool. I love that word.
Yeah, I think it's effective. A lot of very salient details among just various coming of age films. It doesn't even have to be about music per se.
Totally. I couldn't help but think of Lady Bird. I mean, that movie, I remember seeing that movie and it really blew my hair back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Lady Bird's a movie that I really love and is probably like one of my all-time favorite movies. So
Yeah.
and I can see a lot of these comparisons.
Yeah. And look, not all movies can be Lady Bird. But yeah. So you were talking about your little collection of details about Mr. V.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to share?
I mean, we were kind of talking about the audition. You mentioned that he told her she would have to sight read. I would have been interested to see some sort of preparation for that, because when I was preparing for college, even as someone who had been in choir and taken voice lessons since I was like 13, had played an instrument since I was 10, I took like a year's worth of sight reading lessons in preparation for my audition. So like sight reading is not necessarily for vocalists something that is going to be introduced as much as maybe as an instrumentalist. At that age, I certainly found sight reading for singing much more difficult than sight reading on my violin, because you have to be able to hear it. Like, you don't have to be able to hear a piece necessarily fully that you're sight reading on guitar.
Right.
You have to be able to hear it when you're sight reading it vocally.
100%.
It's such a specific set of skills that I spent a full year with like weekly lessons developing, that I find it very unlikely that she was able to put the time in to do this in particular. I don't know about you, but I had to take a music theory test everywhere I auditioned also.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure there's quite a bit about auditions we could all say. Well, Emilio, I mean, you studied film in college.
I did.
So was there like any music audition element to you applying to schools at all?
Or did you have to prepare a portfolio or anything?
I prepared a portfolio, but there was a real moment where I was wondering if I was going to apply to a music school. So I looked into it pretty heavily, and there was a whole shift for me when I was in my own private lessons to focus on sight reading, to focus on putting a piece together. Also, music theory, all of these things that actually do get dropped in the film, but then get discarded.
Fortissimo means very loud. Forte means loud. And
Yeah, all of that
it
stuff.
goes so fast.
No, for sure. I know. But no, absolutely. I mean, so I have some understanding of it and whatnot, but for film, it was mainly portfolio based. So
Right.
I had to submit a bunch of projects and things that I had worked on up to that point, and teacher recommendations and whatnot. I mean, one other little detail I'll mention about when the audition happens, Mr. V
enters.
walks in.
Yeah.
He comes back in, and he does something. I don't know. I feel kind of conflicted about. He bails her out.
When he first enters and he volunteers to accompany her, that actually I think is fine.
Yeah.
That much, everywhere I auditioned, you had the option to bring your own accompanist.
Sure.
I don't think I did anywhere because they'll supply one for you, but you had that option anywhere. So it makes sense.
I'm not talking about
He
that,
can
though.
accompany her, but then he's like playing at the beginning and she doesn't have the strongest start and he's like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Uh-oh, I messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say
That's
she
what I'm
didn't-
talking about.
She didn't get too far. If this was halfway through the song, I would feel a lot worse. I agree that I think this, there's this is maybe morally ambiguous.
It doesn't totally line up with the character. Well, actually, I don't know if it does. Maybe it does. Maybe
Yeah.
that's
He's
kind of
really
where his
rooting
character is
for
supposed to
her.
go.
He's
By this point,
also-
he's rooting for. To me, it felt like it didn't feel like something that you necessarily do.
Well,
because ostensibly Miles shows up and he
Miles
chokes as
bombs.
well. He bombs. And
I-
where is Mr. V to help him there?
I wonder if that was part of Mr. V's motivation to help Ruby, because he's been helping these two students prepare and one bombs and he probably knows that. And he's like, she's my only shot this year.
So maybe it's a
Yeah.
little selfish.
Maybe.
You know what? I like that. I like that read.
Yeah. It's
Mr.
like,
V,
Which
know?
I'm sorry to Miles, but as soon as Mr. V says early on, like, oh, Miles is auditioning at Berkeley, I turned to my boyfriend and I said, he's not getting in. I am sorry.
Yeah, actually, I thought about with Mr. V, like that actor who plays him, Eugenio Derbez. I haven't seen him in many things, but I've seen him in a few things. And I remember there was this movie that he was in called Under the Same Moon that I was shown in Spanish classes in both middle and high school. And I would have to revisit that movie to really have a refined opinion about it. But he plays like a kind of similar character in that movie, in that not like in no means by the milieu. It's a very different setting and premise with that story, but of the character of being like this kind of older guide to the main character who is like intrinsically flawed too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that like that moment in CODA when he bails her out on the audition, like I thought it was going to go a similar way to a scene in Under the Same Moon where he's like trying to act in the kid's best interest, but he just kind of messes things up for himself.
Gotcha.
And but also like to continue the conversation about auditions. I mean, it's like, well, actually, I have a question for both of you. Did either of you both apply to Berkeley?
No, I mean, I applied exclusively to in-state schools. I'm from North Carolina, and I think it was always like in my mind. I'm sure like we would have figured something out, but in my mind, it was purely a financial decision. Like, there's no way I can afford to go out of state for school, so I only auditioned at schools in North Carolina,
which makes a lot of sense. I actually applied to Berkeley and got accepted, but I didn't go because no scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's huge. That was a big thing for me too. It was like, you want to figure out how you're not going to put yourself in a hole or your parents in a hole too.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this movie, by the end of it, it's implied that she gets a scholarship, possibly a full ride to Berkeley off of this audition. Absolutely not.
I
not
know.
happening.
It's a little to make a wish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my case, like thinking back on this era of auditions, I mean, it was actually pretty unusual for me because Berkeley was the only school I had a formal audition for. And as I remember, it was kind of like you picked one piece to demonstrate your talent. And then there was like a sight reading element of it. Then there was also, I think there was kind of like a listen and play aspect of it too. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but the song I auditioned with was Steely Dan's "Reeling in the Years."
I love that song.
Yeah, very in character for the music I was into at that time.
For sure.
Yeah, and you can attest to that, Emilio.
I can. Yeah. I played drums on our version of Kid Charlemagne.
Yeah,
which is another great guitar solo.
When I was like 17.
Yeah, which I remember you totally crushed. It was awesome.
Thank you. But then like alongside the Berkeley experience, all the other schools I was applying to were these small liberal arts colleges. And it was, as far as submitting demonstrations of skill, there was mostly essays.
Yeah, that was a lot of it for me too.
Yeah. And the school that I went to, Sarah Lawrence, I mean, the way that they structure their program, like, yes, there are auditions for the music department, but it's not like to qualify you to get in. It's like if you enroll in the school, you're in. It's more to just place you wherever it's right for you.
Sure.
Yeah, Bard's like that too. Right?
Bard is, to my understanding, like that.
Yeah, another Steely Dan reference. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I think I had like 5 auditions, and I had to audition formally everywhere. I did 2 classical pieces. I did Caro mio ben and Danza danza fanciulle gentile, which are very like every soprano between the ages of 14 and 19 will get the 24 Italian arias book. We probably have one here at the school. It is absolutely the start of your aria repertoire book. Pick 2 from that. And actually, a lot of the auditions requirements specifically say, pick an aria from the 24 Italian arias book. So they are that common.
They're like, don't try to get cute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No Steely Dan.
I could just imagine someone coming in trying to do Donald Fagen. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
So I think we've established that this movie does some things rather well, and then other things not terribly well. In general, they fall into this sort of lazy screenwriting trap. You had a list of things that Mr. V says. I made a little list, and I called it my made-for-TV details.
Ooh.
So again, feeling like there were some aspects of this movie that just felt way too neat and tidy and something that you'd see, I'm sorry, Hallmark, but in a Hallmark film.
Or ABC and Family.
Or ABC Family. There you go. A couple of them that I just want to point out, and we can hit them and we can move straight on. But the first one I put here was Frank and Leo standing up to the fishing regulators. Everybody's suddenly cheering them on after it's been previously established that they think of them clearly as outsiders and at worst freaks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Come on.
I did feel for what they were going through there, but that scene was a little too neat and tidy.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I get it. They're trying to show that this is their moment to kind of stand up for themselves, right? But
I also
my God,
think it speaks to just how desperate these fishermen are for better wages, for better treatment, that they're like, anybody that wants to give us an out here. Literally anyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone. Bueller.
It just doesn't jive with the rest of the film because they've already been established very much as the people on the outside. And to all of a sudden just be welcomed as, no, you're the voice for us.
And I don't know if it would have been in this scene, but one of the criticisms of the film from the deaf community was that there were some moments where Ruby is put in a position to interpret for her father in a situation where there should have been an interpreter already.
I have seen this criticism on Wikipedia, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. And I definitely want to, air validity towards this criticism. I will say that the director's, I think, response to this, not like a formal response, but something she said is that, yes, that's the case legally. And that's going to be the case if you're in New York or if you're in LA, if you're in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Sure.
If you're in a small town, it actually does not matter if it's legally required to supply an interpreter if there is not one available. What are your options?
Yeah.
I'm sure that, yes, there are interpreters available oftentimes in these small towns, but I don't think it's unrealistic necessarily to say that maybe a town this small may not have immediate access at any point.
Fair point. Yeah.
Totally. There's there's actually a bunch of other ones here that I wrote here. We talked about this a little bit before in reference to Sing Street when the choir is singing Let's Get It On. There's that moment where Mr. V separates Miles and Ruby and sort of gets them to try to sing it and sing out a bit. And yeah, she literally goes from sounding like she's never heard the song before. That's the other thing too. It literally sounds like she's like, and then suddenly she sounds like she's sung it like 500 times in the shower.
Yeah.
Again, I get it. There's got to be an arc to this, but okay.
They're
Anyway.
like, all you need is like a quick breath support exercise and then surprise, time to sing, and it'll just trick you into having a lot of power.
Yeah. I'll mention another one, which I slightly mentioned a bit before. It's so convenient that Ruby's pal, Gertie, suddenly thinks that her brother Leo is hot. And
has she not seen him in years?
that's what I'm curious. If she's such a good friend of hers, why is it that all of a sudden, like, how good of friends are they really? And that she works at the bar that all the fishermen hang out at. Come on.
It's a very small town. There's only one bar.
Yeah, but doesn't he even allude to the fact that she can't even drink the beers that she's giving people?
And her response is, these guys can't count to 21, which I actually think is very funny.
Oh,
It's like
totally.
one of the only good jokes in this movie.
Something related to that, though, is I think one of the things that I thought was pretty effective about the movie was the humor. They'll often humor based on mistranslation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I will totally see you on that. I think they really go for a lot of humor based directly around sex.
Yeah.
Totally.
Which they also talk a little bit about in Children of a Lesser God. Now, they talk about it in much more traumatic terms, but this idea that they have very healthy sex lives, and to assume otherwise is,
it's like an
selling them short.
infantilization also. I think of like deaf people as, not having the same desires as hearing people as the rest of the population, which is an infantilization based on stereotypes. I think
100%.
that they're like less capable.
Right. And we were talking a little bit about Gertie, Ruby's friend, and Ruby's brother Leo, and that certainly becomes a little side plot for them, which is that they want to get it on.
Something that's interesting. I was listening to an interview between the director, Sian Heder, and Emerald Fennell of Promising Young Woman.
Yeah.
And Saltburn as of recently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Heder goes in to say that they cut out a lot from this movie. They cut 35 scenes from this movie.
Wow.
Big number.
That's a lot of deleted scenes. And she said that she thinks that something that she has a tendency to do is make every character the protagonist. and that's something she kind of had to fix in editing. And I think you see that a lot in the movie, and that's part of why sometimes like some of these plots, like I don't know that we fully can. They all seem like they could be their own movie.
Yes, that's another detail I wrote here for made for TV moments, which is one thing that totally happens that just gets completely swept under the rug is that whole moment where Leo gets upset with Ruby. And they have that, and which I actually thought was super poignant, which is that he feels infantilized by his deafness, and that it's something that gets in the way of his duties as a burgeoning young man.
Yeah, she doesn't allow him to become empowered because she's always there to step in. I was also thinking about the scene when he goes to the bar. Right before he goes, he tells his father, like, oh, I'm going to go with them to the bar. And he's like, should I text Ruby? And Leo's like, no, I'm a grown man. Like, exactly. And I think it causes Leo to be in a position of dependency that he doesn't want to be in.
Totally.
Like the parents are so dependent on her that they can't really imagine a world where their son is not also dependent on her. That they think they're protecting him. He doesn't want her as an interpreter. He says at one point, our family was fine before you were born.
Everything that you just said there could be the foundation of a really powerful film. And to the film's credit, it's there somewhere in the movie. But I think the very next scene that you see is them going to her concert. And he's like, cool, I'm here. I'm here to support my sister, which I feel like I really wanted more out of that plot line.
Yeah,
because it was really powerful. You just summed it out really, really beautifully. So
yeah, I agree with that. Both aspects of that statement, and that's interesting to hear that, like, she could have treated every character like a protagonist. When you look at a lot of the supporting roles of the movie, like, I wasn't sold on everyone's acting, but I think that all of the supporting members of the main Rossi family, like, I was pretty sold on their performances.
Yeah, totally.
I thought that the father Frank, Troy Kotsur, I mean, he was incredible. Yeah. He has some moments, you were saying, of the humor. He has some moments where he's got to really sell some humor.
Totally.
And he totally crushes it.
And I think when you look at the awards that CODA won at the Oscars, Best Supporting Actor for Troy Kotsur was one of them. And I think that's the win that I agree with the most.
Absolutely. Totally. I mean, as soon as we got to that pickup truck scene, he was really good before then. But that scene, I mean, everything on his face is just like, no competition.
I mean, throughout the movie, I was fixated on his face whenever he was on camera. He does so much good work with it.
Yeah, I mean,
incredibly expressive, which is common in ASL and in sign in general.
He looks the part of a fisherman.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Madeline being there, I mean, I was very into her performance too. She's the established celebrity who is shepherding a cast of some well-known names, but it's mostly underrepresented cast members.
She's first to be cast, and she also insists on casting deaf actors. Like, she threatens to leave the film when the studio wanted to cast hearing actors to play some of the deaf characters. She threatened to leave. And Heder, in this interview I was referring to, also talks about the process of finding Troy and Daniel, who plays Leo. I can't recall if there are any other deaf characters other than the three of them. I think it's just them, right?
I think it's just them.
I think it's just them
but,
too.
I mean, she said that she actually, coming from outside the deaf community, had really no idea what her pool was going to be like. How many deaf actors are out there for her to choose from? Is she going to have 2 options for each role? Is she going to have 50? And she worked very closely with Deaf West in LA, which is a theater company that does a lot of shows that are double cast, so that they have a deaf actor and a hearing actor playing the same role.
Cool.
And I think Troy and Daniel, she found them both through Deaf West specifically.
Very cool to see. I mean, it's funny because her character, I think, she has one real kind of standout moment with Ruby, having to admit that she was nervous about having a daughter who could hear, which, again, I think spoke to a lot of what this movie does do very well, which is when it's really just about the family. This film is really firing on all cylinders.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think that, Madeline, you basically said earlier that, in the second half of the movie, you were into it more.
Yeah.
And I was too, in large part due to those family scenes. And I think it was really where Ruby starts to get into a conflict with her parents over whether she'll go to college or continue to support the family. I think it was like really in those scenes that I started to get more into it. And I felt like the writing was a little bit stronger, and then the performances were better too. Like, honestly, Amelia Jones playing Ruby, I mean, I think she does a good job throughout the film, but I think some moments were certainly were better than others.
Yeah, she was. Heder said that obviously Ruby was the hardest to cast. They saw thousands of actors. They tried to get an actual CODA, an actual child of deaf adults, but couldn't find anyone with like the singing chops that they needed to have somebody with such like a natural tone of their voice that like Amelia doesn't come in with a bunch of singing experience. She takes vocal lessons, but she has this sort of like raw quote unquote talent that is supposed to be portrayed in the film as well, which I think it does very well. Apparently they almost actually cast a different actor, and then they get Amelia's tape, and like the casting director insists that Heder watch it before casting this other person. And Heder said she was Ruby from the moment I saw her. And she speaks to this because she's so expressive that like every thought she has, you read on her face.
The characteristic that Amelia Jones does share with Ruby is that she came into the film an untrained singer. That I did read as well. And so that was something that she could relate to directly with the character she was portraying.
And Heder said in many ways she kind of became a CODA on set, and that like she had to establish this relationship with Marlee Matlin and Troy Kotzer and Daniel Durant, I believe, who plays Leo. Like she has to establish this relationship with them. She, takes sign lessons. She becomes fluent in sign and ASL for this film, and oftentimes like would actually kind of assist Heder if she needed to adjust a shot. If like Heder needed her to communicate with them if she was too far away so that she didn't have to enter like the actual shot. I found that really interesting. Like supposedly she really does kind of take this role on set as well.
Mm-hmm. One detail that I don't know if it made your made for TV list, but that kind of struck me that way was the way that after the family faces this adversity from the I don't know exactly what you'd call it, the union that they're part of, the regulating
agency or something.
Yeah.
Yes, of all these fishing people and families. After they try to stand up to them and form their own system,
Their co-op or
their
something.
co-op.
Yeah.
I feel like just that co-op kicks off awfully quickly.
Oh, definitely.
Suddenly
Yeah.
they have like branded semi-trucks.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the
Yes,
the
exactly.
mother is very nervous in a scene that they don't have like the resources to be able to do this. And then within the next 5 minutes, they like get it rolling and they're like signing a lease and are on the news.
And it continues to grow after they're ostensibly also putting this kid through college, although maybe she gets a full ride. I don't know.
Julian, what I thought you were maybe going to talk about is the experience with the person that invades their boat. What is this person
Oh, the
called?
Coast Guard.
No,
Or-
I mean,
you're talking
the
about
inspector?
the
Yeah, inspector.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were going to get to that, but that was
Actually, no.
that was one of my made for TV kind of plot lines, in that I feel like I could see this coming a mile away, and I don't really like when I can feel so heavily like the tension that the movie is trying to build. I feel like throughout almost the entire film, I was like, they're going to get in some sort of trouble from a regulation standpoint of like being deaf and like not always having a hearing person, not always having an interpreter on their boat. And so I just feel like that, to me, felt very obvious that this was going to happen at some point.
I think that's a perfectly great capstone to this, which is I think this movie is extraordinarily predictable for all the ways that I think it really lands the plane on very specific moments. You can see so much in this movie coming a mile away.
Plot-wise, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the scenes that resonated with us the most were scenes where you maybe didn't see an exact moment coming.
An exact moment, like a filmic interpretation.
Yeah.
That there was a creative decision there made.
Yeah, and like the dropping of the sound during the concert, didn't see that coming. I mean, I think the truck scene in general, just because of like the physicality of it, is not something I saw coming. Like these particular moments stood out because they're unpredictable.
Yeah.
But I think what is nice about the representation aspect of this movie balanced with its hallmarkiness is that, well, I think what a lot of people of various underrepresented groups will advocate for is the right to be average. In the media that they produce, is that not everything has to be extraordinary or game changing. That this is a way of leveling the playing field. Part of the discourse that this movie is engaging with is this tradition of portraying deaf characters among other marginalized people in film as these kind of downtrodden people who are missing out on something, and that's not the reality of life for many deaf people. And that that's one of the advancements this movie makes is portraying its deaf characters as these people who really in many ways live content lives.
Yeah, and pretty full lives too.
One of the big points that was emphasized was the sexuality of the characters.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too that I thought that in that regard there was something a little airbrushed about Ruby, which is that in this family where everyone is otherwise portrayed as like a sexually active being, that Ruby at her age, I mean, yes, she is very young, but it seems there's something that seemed like a little bit too virginal about her.
I just though feel she also has a lot of social anxiety. Like I don't think it's like beyond imagination that she would be incredibly withdrawn with her peers because of how much she's been bullied.
That's true.
I think there also could be this idea that she doesn't really feel like she fits in with the deaf community fully, and she doesn't really feel like there's a place for her amongst the hearing community.
Yeah.
That she sort of straddles this line, and as a result, she doesn't feel like she can fully embrace going one way or the other when it comes to maybe some of the social norms or some of the openness that you might have if you were to kind of fall more neatly in one camp versus another.
And that's part of like what music does for her, right? Like when she's talking to her mom, when she first tells her I joined the choir, and her mom doesn't take this particularly well. She says like, if I was blind, would you want to paint? She kind of takes it as a personal affront.
Right. She's like, you're just trying to make me upset.
She's like, you're a teenager.
Yeah.
And Ruby's response to that, in addition to why does this have to be about you, is also like, I'm making friends.
Right.
We don't really see her with any until it seems like she's getting along well in her choir class, and she, her relationship grows with Miles. We don't see her with anyone else other than Gertie prior to that. Yeah.
And I read too that another criticism of the movie from the deaf community was really the emphasis on music in it. That a similar story could have existed with a different passion for the Ruby character, and that as if the focus on music made it a little too much about the sensory experience or lack thereof.
Right, and that might also come from the fact that the director herself can hear. And I'm not just saying this to sort of say that somebody who is not of a particular community can't create art for others in a community that they're not a part of. But I think it speaks a little bit to, and we also alluded a little bit to this before too, that music is a very simple, direct device that very clearly is something that someone who can hear can enjoy, and someone who can't hear can't enjoy nearly the same way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just as we draw this conversation to a close, and bringing it back to this award season theme, one question that I want to pose to the both of you and try to answer myself is, so this movie won Best Picture. Would you have given the award to that movie? And if not, what would you have given it to instead?
I think it's a difficult question because I do think that this is a major step forward for deaf representation.
Agreed.
I can't in good faith take away Best Picture from this film because I really, really respect what it's going for. And I think that there are like really, really nice moments of this movie. There are also moments of this movie and much of it that frustrated me to an extent, but none of my frustrations lied with the deafness of the movie. It was all like the high school stuff or the details with the music stuff. If I'm looking at it from like a more objective angle, then I would say no. In this lineup, I personally would not have voted for this movie for Best Picture, but I also, like I said, can't in good faith like take it away.
Yeah, I could not in good faith take the win away from that movie. I am proud of it. And that actually, when you look at the history of Best Picture winners, this is not the first movie that, has a win that is a significant step forward for some kind of representation. And I'm thinking in particular of The King's Speech.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, rather about a speech impediment. And that was a movie released rated R. The King's Speech, and then censored to PG-13 to be more accessible to audiences of children and teenagers who had stutters. With my knowledge of what was out at that time, what I might have chosen, though, it probably would have, on the merit of content, been either The Power of the Dog or Drive My Car.
I was just going to say Drive My Car.
Yeah, incredibly powerful
It's a
movie.
really powerful movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to more or less echo what you guys are saying, which is there's a lot of power in
representation.
There's a lot of power in
there
representation. And that, it wouldn't have won if it hadn't been for that. I do think it played a really big role in that. But what I'm trying to say here, I think, is that there are a bunch of other worse reasons, I think, that movies can be exalted from a personal place. This is definitely not a movie that is up there with some of the other ones that I'm seeing here amongst the other nominees.
It's a pretty strong year.
It is.
It is a strong year.
Although there are some movies nominated there that I don't think I would have nominated.
I do not understand why Don't Look Up is on this list.
Honestly, I thought King Richard was kind of an overrated movie too.
I didn't see King Richard, so
didn't
I can't
see that
speak
one
to
either.
That.
Yeah,
I did see Don't Look Up, and I think I liked it more than some people, but I would not have put it on here either.
Yeah, but so for context for the listeners, the list of Best Picture nominees, in addition to the winner CODA for 2021, was Belfast, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune,
Part 1,
yes, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and Steven Spielberg's West Side Story.
Right.
And yeah, strong year, mostly I think good pickings. And yeah, I mean, it's like in any event, it's pretty tough competition. And also when you look at one of the other awards that CODA won, Best Adapted Screenplay, tough category that year too, because it's up against Drive My Car, Dune, The Lost Daughter, and The Power of the Dog.
Did you guys see Nightmare Alley?
Yeah,
No.
I did. Yeah,
I saw it, and it was kind of long, but I really liked what it was going for.
I enjoyed that.
I know
movie
that
too.
that's another remake. That was a remake of a film from the 40s, I believe.
Yeah, it's not my favorite Guillermo del Toro, but it was a solid movie.
Yeah. I think
I've told you both before, but I loved Dune. I got so obsessed with that movie when it came out. I still need to finish the book before part 2 comes out. But like that movie swept the technical categories, I think, very deservingly that year.
I was just gonna say for Best Picture, like I feel like if I'm looking objectively, I would have said Power of the Dog most likely. I actually still haven't seen Drive My Car. I really want to, but I keep kind of getting put off by the runtime.
it's a long movie.
Which
usually deters me, but it's really worth it.
I
It's
mean,
a great 3 hours.
Yeah, and I know that, and I've since I can enjoy a good 3-hour movie, but at the time I was like, I don't know that I want to sit in a movie theater for this long. I've done it twice this year, so might as well do it on my couch now. But
For Oppenheimer and what else?
I mean, for Killers of the Flower Moon as well.
Yeah.
So I think Power of the Dog would have been my choice. I really liked Spielberg's West Side Story. I don't think it would have won for me, but I really, really enjoy that movie. It was like a 5-star movie for me. I cried multiple times, so I wouldn't have been upset if it won, but I understand why it doesn't quite rise to the same level as some of these other movies.
Belfast, that movie was pretty impressive too. I liked it more than I expected to, actually. And then, I liked Licorice Pizza a lot.
I loved everything about Licorice Pizza until the last couple minutes.
Yeah. I like Licorice Pizza a lot. I mean, we've talked.
We have.
We've talked about this a little
on mic a little bit and off mic a lot.
Yeah, but famously, the Academy is like not always a huge PTA fan.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, maybe he'll get his legacy award someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one final note before we finish this off, kind of about the milestone of representation that is CODA. I had to think of this quote I heard in a different context from Gina Davis once about the advancement of Thelma and Louise, which is that was a great feminist movie for its time, but then she noticed this trend in the industry when it came to feminist representation of like, okay, we've got one, and then it just kind of stays the same for a while. It appears to advance in the moment, but not long term.
Right.
So I wonder, will CODA lead to something longer term or not?
Well, one bit of representation that happened after this movie is that Daniel Durant, who plays Leo, gets cast on Dancing with the Stars and places fifth. Makes it to the semifinals.
Impressive.
I watched one video. I feel like he's pretty stiff as a dancer. But I still think incredibly impressive for anyone to get that far in Dancing with the Stars, particularly a deaf actor who's not a dancer.
Right.
So I think that's definitely a step forward.
I think we might see, as we continue talking about these unique Oscar Best Picture winners, that sometimes it feels a little bit like boxes get checked, and then maybe there's a little status quo that gets returned to. I don't know.
Yeah. And speaking of both that and boxes being checked, the next film we're going to discuss in this episode cycle for our suggestion box segment will be, I think, the oldest film we've discussed to date, 1969's Midnight Cowboy.
John Schlesinger's most famous work. Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman.
An incredibly unique Best Picture winner.
Totally.
Even to this day.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that movie. I'm excited to talk about it.
Same here.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like we did it. We watched CODA. We talked about it.
Yes. So you can follow us on Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. For those of you who like movie logs on social media, you can follow Madeline or myself on Letterboxd. My handle is Julian_Barthold. Hers is
at Patroness of Cats.
Guys, thanks so much.
Of course.
Good
All right,
night.
take care. Good night, guys.